Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about The Substance. Substance is a extremely stylized body horror movie for the ages, and I think when watching it at first, I didn't. I mean, I sort of knew it was weird. It's been out for a while, but there are certain parts at the beginning where I was like, people don't talk like that. That's not how that is. That's not what that is. And not in like this movie is fake or wrong or something. I don't think that at all. The hyper stylization kind of lends itself to all of it because it both like, oh wow, you really got that perfectly, to I don't know if that would be a show on TV, but also how you're showing this is probably how that would happen. It's a very interesting mixture of the absurd while also being very, very true to life to a point that's like pretty shocking. I don't often see that, and especially with the exaggeration of the kind of extreme like gore, gross body horror. I almost threw up at one point, which is not a thing a lot of movies can do to me. I think it was like this and Osmosis Jones, and I think in both times I was eating, which was a stupid idea to be eating at the scenes I was eating during. I don't know if I'm as obsessed as everyone else. It's really long, although I do find it like really fascinating that this is a movie that gets Oscar nominations and stuff. It makes me have a little more faith in the world, to be honest with you. Its director and her view on female body image, and particularly like women who are on camera all the time, and that is their main sense of self-esteem. Both like the actress, the woman Demi Moore plays, has like no, not that she should or something, but she has nothing really else going on. She's not, and not to be on a cliche, but she's not like in a club or something. She doesn't have a friend she hangs out with all the time. She's not, married. She actually doesn't even have cats. So she's just like, she's got nothing going on except for this show. And neither does Margaret Qualley, but I think it is meant to be in the extremes, this movie. I mean, it's about, if you didn't know, Demi Moore, character of Elizabeth Sparkle, has gotten her workout show canceled. She's worried about it, and by happenstance, after getting in a car accident, is told about the substance. She takes the substance, and then another lady played by Margaret Qualley literally rips out from her back and becomes sort of a new her for 7 days. Margaret Qualley is the new her for 7 days. She ends up auditioning to replace her on her own show. Then she goes back to being Demi Moore and just being in her house and sad and stuff. And then they switch back. And if they don't switch back every 7 days, horrifying things will happen. And of course, horrifying things will happen, or did happen, and have happened. What I think is really fascinating is I think it's attempt to both use bodies and gore, and like it definitely makes you not want to like, as much as they're trying to say sexy imagery of female bodies and stuff, I didn't feel very like, it wasn't like alluring in the movie to me, because it's obviously being much more critical. But even after, I was like, everything feels gross now, thanks to The Substance. This film is talking about particularly female bodies and the commodification of youth, and particularly like the kind of, female body where people are lusting after you and being this like the commodification of using your body and using your image to sell yourself and things like that. Although I have heard various reviews from female critics talking about like particularly the scene where Demi Moore is like putting on makeup before the date and like hates everything she's wearing. I do actually think there's a lot of like universality in this, even though they're being like insanely very specific about this movie or within this film. But I think how stylized it is kind of lets the film do a lot more. I think there's very few times you see someone be stylized and it's not stylized for the stylization point. They're like, look how artistic I am. And in this film, you have her see the long hallway in the production studio where she films her show. But that long hallway, you could put on all sorts of meaning behind it. But I definitely think like this long, drawn out hallway you have to go through every day is almost like the preparation for your work, as well as the preparation for, that you have to go through to like go into this other world. There's a lot of like interesting imagery, interesting ideas with The Substance. Like when she gets it, it's all like lined out like basically like a home chef, which I thought that was like actually really clever. Of course, if there was a substance, it would be labeled very clearly. So anyone could follow it because they're not going to pay someone to actually put the substance in you and stuff, which I thought was like entertaining. But at the same time, like her apartment sort of you don't realize it's an apartment until you realize it, and it's like way too big. There's certain things that are just like grand and crazy, but it kind of like, you kind of go with it at a certain point. I think the part that broke me was early on where Dennis Quaid was talking about like Demi Moore's character, and he mentioned her like fertility, which was like, I don't think guys talk about fertility like that. I know there are guys who like care about this stuff and make laws, and I'm not saying it doesn't, but it was like the way he said it, I was like, that's not real. I think it might be because this is written by a female director. I don't think people actually talk like that, but I think the point is that people don't actually talk like that. Dennis Quaid is actually really great. It's probably the best performance I've seen from him in a while. I'm surprised like this came out around the time he did the Ronald Reagan biopic, which is super weird, but whatever. He's really swinging from the fences, but he's really good at doing like an over-the-top performance. Demi Moore is probably the best I've ever seen her in anything, and the fact that she's so game for this movie actually helps with it. I've never like disliked her. I never liked her as much as like, she used to be an actress who like kind of, I'm not trying to be a jerk here or anything, but just like striptease and all that kind of, her career sort of peaked right when I was getting more into like current releases and stuff. So like she always like, I didn't have the entry point necessarily, so it never fully made sense to me for most of my time getting into movies, like her stardom, like why do people care about her? She's good in things like Ghosts and stuff like that, but she always never felt like a part of my film going. It felt like I was watching a previous generation's thing, which I think is like perfect for something like this. She's like, someone from sort of the Brat Pack or whatever. This is probably the most I've ever liked her in anything. I thought she was really good, and the fact it was in like a horror movie, other than the fact that she's the poster for I Spit on Your Grave. She's not really known for horror, and she was really, really good in that. I would actually like her to be in more horror stuff. And Margaret Qualley was actually pretty fantastic as Sue, her substance self or whatever. I thought she was really great, very good at doing campy and playing it up and stuff, but there's a real sense of reality through all of it. I think if you're going to do stylization, you have to really be saying something, and I don't think there's ever a part where they're using weird fisheye lenses and doing this and having this set up and stuff like that it isn't purposeful style, which I think is like so much. I think that makes the film a lot more interesting. I do feel like there's probably a lot of this film, like I even thought like before shooting this, like should I even talk about it, because I'm not worried. I feel like there's so much to go through with this film. It feels like probably one of the more dense body horror films I've really seen in a long time, and it's really kind of interesting in that because I think there's a lot to say about people's bodies and their commodification and how we're selling them and how they are sold and everything like that. I do think how it perceived media was a little like, it's able to get away with it in the narrative with this like workout show. I've never heard of a workout show being that big. Maybe Richard Simmons, but it's just not really, maybe Jane Fonda with the tapes, but that was never a show. I sort of wish they'd done it more with the modern social media or something like that, because those are people who women or men or whomever who use Instagram or TikTok and use their looks for stuff like that, and I think they that sort of makes a little more sense, but the point still stands. I think it is a really interesting film, and I don't think I love it itself. I more just love that this is a thing for people. I don't hate it or anything. I think it's a very good movie. It's a hard watch, and it's really long, and I do think it's also interesting, probably one of the few times you see something that's critical of both its protagonist and the situation around that protagonist. It like takes a lot of sympathy on her, Elizabeth Sparkle or Sue or whomever, but it doesn't really let her go. It notices like her shallowness, and like like I was saying, it's like, I think that's one of the things about life. You really need to have something you're doing, and I think like because she had sort of nothing, and again, I'm not trying to play into a cliche, but that was like what was happening in this movie. She didn't know what to do with herself other than that. She had nothing to fall back on. Kind of the darkness of that, the despair of that, the despair of fame, and how it can like envelop you and be and the attention you need can be everything, but at the same time, like the things you have to go through for that sort of attention. And I do think part of the other thing with it is like, when Jane Fonda did those tapes and people did those tapes, they actually had like sort of a love and a feeling for that, and they wanted to educate people. I never really got like she had any real sense of like, I know she has like an Oscar in this, but I never got a sense like she liked doing stuff. It seemed like she just liked the attention of the camera, and like I do think it works, but it felt like there are like larger kind of narratives of like, you know, I think someone who is, you know, someone who's being creative or doing her workout show, and she could love doing her workout show and doing that and making the show. She really believe in it and realize like her looks are the only way she is able to do the thing that she loves. But almost, I think one of the odd things about the substance is it's like the thing that she loves is almost just like her being herself, which I think is like part of it. But I wish there had been like a larger sort of thing about that, because I think it's like she obviously like loves the director of this film, Caroline Forget. I think it I'm not sure if I'm saying her name right, but this director, I think she gets like, definitely people want that shallow sense of attention, but I just like don't really, I wish there'd been more of that in there. I mean, this movie's long enough, but I still wish there'd been something within the substance to acknowledge like, why do these people want to be in Hollywood? And it felt like it's like, well, she's vapid and this industry is vapid, and although the narrative takes pity on her, she's still vapid, and that's all she really needs, and she just loves that attention, and the attention is what matters. But because it's so stylized and so weird and strange, it works for it. But I kind of think there's like extra layers to those sort of things, and I wish it had gone more into it. I don't think, but maybe, you know, this isn't a dissertation on female body or anything like that. It's more just about the kind of the commodification through the industry, and also what it has done to her, basically. I like this movie. I do think it's super stylized, and you definitely feel like you're in a weird, strange world. And although Amelia Perez is someone who doesn't live in that area, doesn't really understand much of the context he's talking about. I'm talking about Mexico and shooting it somewhere else. This was mainly made in France and is talking about America. It's actually fairly good at it, which is kind of shocking. Like, yeah, like I've heard critics say like the typeface of the cookbook is different, or in the bathroom stalls they go all the way down instead of usually what Americans do and stuff like that. But those are like very nitpicky things. I think she got the general vibe of America, but I think it also helps that this was like stylized, so there's probably like some stuff like we didn't notice that she sort of got away with, which is like, you know, how a smart way to direct, I think, frankly, much better problem solver than anything to do with Amelia Perez. But I think this is an interesting film. I honestly want to watch it a few more times. I think it's quite an experience. It is real gross. I mean, like some real dead alive, brain dead, some real gross gore shit, which I'm very shocked that people, it really takes a turn at a certain point. This is probably one of the more interesting films about bodies and beauty, and how the entertainment industry swallows up beauty and youth and spits it back out again. And like, I almost wish it had gone more into that, and why people need that and what they get from that. But at the same time, it's more about her and the substance, and like, if you had that choice, would you do it, and what that does to you. I'm curious about that weird guy who's like trying to stop aging with his son's blood or something. I forget. Like, it reminds me of all those things, and how, I don't know, in anything that's about like trying to be young, it always feels like such a fool's errand. Like it's never really going to work out. And I think this is like similar to almost all of those from the Twilight Zone to this and that, but it's just very well told. I think the thing is with this is like, there's so many things like, what if it did this? What if it did that? You know, why don't we really talk about that in this film? But overall, I think from what it's, you know, how it chose to tell its story, what it is doing with its story, everything with the substance, where you have Sue and Elizabeth Sparkle kind of fighting between the whole life and who gets to take from who and all this stuff. That's really the movie, is like your own personal sacrifice of youth and beauty versus who you are in itself. And maybe who you are is just somebody eating food all day, watching TV, not knowing what to do with themselves, and like hating every minute of it, whereas you wish you could be, you know, Sue or something like that. But I don't know. I do think it works. I think I'm being a little critical, but I don't love when people do these, like, let's talk about the shallow emptiness of beauty and things like that, while showing someone in a shallow, empty way. But I think the narrative ultimately worked with that. Maybe I wish it'd been a little deeper in some places, and maybe I'm being too nitpicky about it. Maybe I waited too long to see this movie. But I don't know, I think The Substance was a really unique, interesting vision, and also definitely one that made me want to throw up and was disgusted by all of it. And maybe that's sort of the point. Just leave and be like, how disgusting is this that all this is going on while you look at people's butts a lot? And that's sort of the oddness and the strangeness in the experience that is The Substance. So if you've seen The Substance and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.